of minutes, but I want to welcome you to the monthly webinar that Waypoint puts on called the Waypoint 55, which is a webinar on a ministry related topic in 55 minutes or less. And we've been doing this series for just over 4 years now. So we've got 50 plus webinars in the books, and the topics are all for ministry leaders. Particularly, we try and target lay leaders, key lay leaders in your church, and try and help equip them and encourage them in whatever area of ministry that they're in. And so that could be elders, prayer team leaders, security team leaders, missions team leaders, youth and children sponsors, and a number of other areas, small group leaders and the like. And this topic is new for us in the 4 years. We've got actually a pair of webinars, the one this month about men's ministry ideas that work. And then in 2 months in August, we have one for women's ministry and women's ministry events that work. And so they're kind of paired up. And so if you have someone that'll be interested in that one, we'd invite you to have those people join the webinar coming up in middle of August. But tonight we have joining us Stacy Burkholder, who is the outreach pastor at Bridge Christian Church in Fishersville, Virginia, and E.L. Jones, who is the senior minister, co-senior minister at Compass Christian Church in Mechanicsville, Virginia, two friends of mine. And when we were conceiving of the idea for this webinar, both of these churches came to mind. And the idea with this webinar is that most churches, I think, would love to do a better emphasis of reaching men and discipling men in their church, and they're scratching their heads thinking, we've just tried things, and so far we haven't found anything that really works well. And that seems to be the common theme. And so we're going to talk about some things that seem to be working currently from these two guys. And first of all, I want to say at the bottom of your screen, is a Q&A button. And so as either of our guys are presenting tonight, if you think of a question, go ahead and type it in exactly when you think of it rather than waiting, because you'll forget. And it goes up in a queue over on the side of our screen. And so we can see what questions we have there. And if we have some questions that we can answer at the end, or even if they fit during a segue during the webinar, we'll try and do that. If we don't get to answer your question live, we get a report after the webinar is over that allows us to make sure we answer your question via email afterwards. The same is true about any of the resources that might be mentioned in tonight's webinar, which I know of at least one that will be. There's an automated email that goes out tomorrow evening, 24 hours after this webinar closes, and we're able to put some information in there about upcoming webinars, but also resources and emails from our two guys, both Stacy and EL, tonight. If you've got any follow-up questions you'd like to ask them about what they're doing in men's ministry at their churches, that might make sense for your church as well. Just make a note of the fact that since we began 5 years ago, Mid-Atlantic Christian University has sponsored our webinar platform. We share a common ministry footprint with churches here in the Mid-Atlantic states. And so we're great partners together. So we're thankful that they sponsor our webinar platform for us. And I want to tell you about the webinars that we've done for the last 4 years. We have a YouTube channel, the Waypoint 55 channel, and we have all the webinars that we've done in playlists by ministry type. And so if you've got someone in your church that would like to be trained in a particular area, you can go to our YouTube channel, Waypoint Church Partners, and find those on different topics. And so I'm trying to think how many views, but in the last 3 months, I think we've had more than 1,000 views of our webinars that we've put on and put onto our YouTube channel. So for example, the last couple of webinars we've done very recently was one last month about pastoring your pastor, how churches can take care of their pastors better, which is unfortunately not the norm. And then just very recently, we had one about children's safety and what's the checklist to make sure your church facility is as safe as possible for the kids in your church, particularly from people coming on your property that shouldn't be there. And that was a great webinar. Both of those are found on our YouTube channel. We invite you to do that and go to it. The other thing I'd say is past year, we started an every other week podcast, the Waypoint podcast, with Dyke McCord and Becca Hott on our staff. And they interview a ministry leader in our region, the Waypoint region. So we're not interviewing people from Ohio or California, but people in the Waypoint region who have great ministry stories to tell that we can learn from. So since January, we've just shy, Becca told me that we are just shy of 1,000 downloads of the webinars that we're doing every other week. And and you may know some of the people that have been interviewed on there. From Carl Kuhl was the first one from Maryland, Matt Tina Wilson from down in Myrtle Beach, and others that were great conversations about what they're doing in ministry. But I want to go ahead and get started and get rolling. We're glad that you all have joined us tonight. And the topic is men's ministry events that work. And I don't think we need to spend a whole lot of time talking about the why, because you wouldn't be joining us tonight if you didn't understand the why of why do we need to focus on men's ministry. There are some very familiar statistics out there that I am going to show very quickly on the slides, but then we're going to start talking to our guys here. But I do want to make sure that you understand some of the statistics that give us a glimpse to the why about why men's ministry is so important. So the first one, you've probably seen this statistic before, is if the statistics are accurate, that when a lady comes to church, comes to Christ first in her family will join her at church 17% of the time. So about 1 in 6 is what that turns out. Conversely, when the guy comes to Christ first, his family will join him at church 93% of the time. And the statistics for this and the other two slides comes from the website of the Washington Area Alliance of Men's Ministries in Washington, D.C. And so I grabbed these off of their website. And so that's just staggering to think it's not half or a third, but it's like, almost everybody when the guy comes. And so, and that's the evangelistic side of reaching guys. And then there's the discipling side. Just because you get them to come to church regularly, some of the statistics bear this out, is in America, surveys will show that 9 in 10 men in America would say they believe in God. So nearly every guy in America says they believe in God. 5 in 6 of them would call themselves Christians, not just believing that there is a God, but they would call themselves Christian in nature, which sounds a little high to me, but who isn't going to say that? But the flip side of that is only 1 in 3 men who call themselves Christians attend a church on a given Sunday. So which probably is not surprising to any of us. And we know the flip side of that is every Sunday, 1 in 4 women worship in church without their husbands. And we know who those gals are who are faithful and love Jesus, pray for their husbands, but there ain't no way they're even coming to church. And that's the sad side of that. The last set of statistics I would tell you is about men's ministry. Churches report less than 1 in 10 church in America has a vibrant men's ministry, something that they can say is active, ongoing, and actually has guys coming to it. So if your church has one, number one, congratulations, you're in the top 10% of American churches. And if it doesn't, you're on this webinar for a reason, because we're struggling to figure out how to have a good men's ministry at our church. And because of that, and the number of guys in a church that are part of a men's ministry, less than 1% of church-going men in America are part of an active men's ministry. And so 1 in 100, less than 1 in 100 men would be able to say, I'm part of a good men's ministry, for those that do go to church. And so that's why we're talking about men's ministry tonight. So only 1 out of 18 church-going men in America is involved in any kind of active discipling relationship or program in his church. That's 6%, 1 out of 18. And so that's not just the evangelism side, getting them to come to church and understand who Jesus is and to claim him as their savior, but then to get them into some kind of growing relationship in their faith, it's almost non-existent. So that's the why. I don't know if I can include the link to that in our email tomorrow if you'd like those statistics, or I'll actually create a PDF of these slides that we can attach as well, so you can grab those. But the why of men's ministry is pretty easy to create a really strong case for. Man, we got to get serious about this. So that being said, I'm curious for Stacy and EL, maybe in that order, you could tell us kind of what men's ministry looked like at your church prior to its current status as far as the kind of things that you tried, maybe things that you tried that didn't work, or you were frustrated the guys wouldn't show, or just kind of the general idea of men's ministry? Because I know that you've been around the block a couple of times before today. So I'm curious, what are those things that didn't work for you that frustrated you? Oh, let me make sure. There you go.
Hey, Tim, thank you. First, if I could just real quick, thank everybody for the opportunity to not just share a few things, but my guess is I'll hear a few things from you that will be helpful for us. We are in the process of learning how to do men's ministry better, and I believe that we can do better in almost everything we're doing. So this is going to be fascinating for me. It's neat for me to be on with EL. We're going to learn some stuff from what he's doing. I've already heard some really cool stuff. If I can share some things that haven't worked, like if that's the place that we're going to start, let me just say that I believe everything we've done has had some good. And I'll say that to your groups. You're probably doing things that are working, right? And that's important to recognize. But it's also why it's hard to find things that are really working. Because when anything works just a little bit, it's harder to let it go, because you think, do I just need to wring that rag a little harder? Maybe we haven't done it long enough. And so we end up trying things that are probably never going to do much more than they are, because we've done that here at Bridge many times. But I'll share one thing, and I want to hear from EL, that has never worked for us in men's ministry. And that's what I would call the sneak attack. Anytime that we planned something that we tried to amp up with a whole lot of fun and then sneak a little spirituality in the back door, has never worked well for us. Even if we were open about, hey, we're going to have fun, fellowship, and and someone's going to pray at the end and have a Bible study. Honestly, I have not personally felt good on the giving side of that, and I have not seen a lot come from the receiving side of that. And so one of the things that we have tried to do moving forward is stay away from things that seem to advertise one thing, but we really want it to be another, and just be real direct with guys. Look, here's what it is. If it's a series about purity, we're coming right out front. We're saying, hey, this is about sexual purity and growing. And if it's about shooting skeet and going fishing, then that's what we do for that day. I'll share about some other programs we have that we're real forward with, but I think we're trying to stay away from trying to make something fun into something spiritual, or vice versa. So it's helped us to have men that I think walk away going, you know what, that was great, or that was spiritual, and that's just what I expected.
All right, that's a great word. Thanks, Stacy. What are some of the things that you've tried along the way that you're just frustrated? You put in a lot of work, and guys just don't want to show up.
Yeah, just thinking about tonight, like I've been in ministry going on 20 years next year, and I was in 3 churches, and I'm still in my 3rd church. We did this church merge with Compass, but the 3 churches before Compass, we never really had a men's ministry. We would try Saturday morning breakfasts once a month with prayer, and it usually faded out within a few months. Never could get young guys to come out to something like that because it was way too early on a Saturday. And so I guess the main thing I'd like to say is what does not work is not doing anything or not trying, And I love what Stacy said, we're not right where we want to be at, and we still struggle in what we do. But if you don't do anything, if you don't really strive to do something to get men together, it ain't going to work. And so coming together at Compass, and a couple of years ago, I made it just a part of my prayer life, praying to God, help me be convicted to do something with the men in our church, and not to give up on it, kind of thing. So that's one thing that really kind of, the once a month things, the prayer stuff, the Saturday morning breakfast, 7 a.m. Let's get together and eat and let's pray. We tried that. I tried that multiple years. It never held together. But then a couple years ago, saying, hey, we're going to focus on men's ministry, do fun things, but also do spiritual things. It really started picking steam up. So
that's great. Well, Stacy or EL, let's go back to that. Let's talk about some of the fun things first. and then we'll go to the spiritual things second, get into that. So I'm curious, just for guys out there that haven't had the luxury of seeing what other churches are doing, what are some of the fun things that you've done? And then we can talk about, how we went deeper with the guys once we did that. But I'm curious
Yeah.
from both of you, some of the things that you've seen, and I'm hoping to
So-
chime in on a couple of things that I've seen worked well too.
So yeah, 2 years ago when we merged our churches, we had a lot. First of all, we had a huge bit of growth, but we had two churches that didn't really know each other, and so we're like, man, let's do some big event, some fun event. Let's do something that's getting to get guys out here. And like Stacy said, we're not trying to sneak them with some little Devo in the back. No, it's, hey, we're going to have fun, and this is what we're going to do. And so what we decided to do was this whole the restaurant axe throwing thing was kind of getting big. It started building some steam up there. So we decided, hey, let's buy all the wood. Let's figure out how to build these things. Let's build 2 axe throwing targets, and let's build about 8 cornhole boards, because we didn't own any cornhole boards at our church. Instead of going to buy them, like, hey, let's go build them. We got guys that love to work with wood and cut things and hammer stuff and nail stuff. So we just picked a day and said we had all the wood. We're going to have hot dogs, and I'm going to add a side point here. No small hot dogs, none of these small Nathans. We get big Hebrew hot dogs at every men's event. We call them men dogs. And so anyway, we get some of the biggest hot dogs you can buy at BJ's. And we're going to have burgers and big dogs, and we're going to make wood build targets and cornhole boards. And for an hour, we had a blast. We had guys cutting holes in the boards. There you got some guys there cutting holes in the boards. We got guys making targets, big old targets that we're throwing axe at. We end up spray painting. You see the spray paint that we did even that night. We had tail trucks backed up, equipment out. And it was a time where we probably had, I think I counted about 47, 48 guys that night. Hardly any of them really knew each other. But by the end of the night, man, some of the ones that just started coming to our church, they were like rock stars, man. They everybody knew who they were because they could throw axes, and they knew how to handle a nail gun. So it was pretty cool being able to get guys together to have fun. And I'll say this lastly, to make it even bigger and to kind of pipe it up, because guys love competition. Most men, they want to win or they have something to brag about. So we ordered a belt, a championship, kind of like a WrestleMania type belt, like a championship. It says Compass Men's Axe Throwing Champion on it. And it's big. I mean, it's real big. I've never put it on because I haven't won it yet. But we gave it to the winner, and we've done 2 of these axe throwing champion tournaments. And so far, the same guy's won both of them. So he is the undefeated champion right now at our church. So.
All right. So, and so I'm curious, when you did the 48, just tell us just a little bit about how the tournament worked and how long it took to play and those kind of things as far as your evening went.
Yeah, the evening went great. I mean, yeah. For us, it took about an hour to build everything. And very quickly, just how we do it is the top 8 guys, we went into a playoff situation. So everyone got to throw. I think we gave everybody 4 or 5 throws, and we counted up the points. As you look at the picture down there, the bullseye was worth 5, the green circle was 4, the blue was 3. If you got just a stick anywhere on that board, it was 1 point. And so we just tallied up all the scores. Everybody got 4 throws. The top 8 guys, we did like 1 against 8, 2 against 7, 3 and 6, 4 and 5. And by the time we got to the end, the championship round, with this older gentleman, Cliff Dennis, who didn't have a lot of friends at church, didn't know a lot of guys. We had a very new person. I think he only came to our church like 2 Sundays. He came out to this event. I was the only guy that knew this guy. His name was Ryan. He's very soft-spoken, introverted kind of a guy, but really cool dude. He made it to the championship round, and guys are lined up chanting Ryan, Ryan, and no one knew this guy. And now he's walking around the church halls, like at church stuff, like everybody. This guy's like the dude, and he didn't win it. Cliff Dennis won it, but it just made some healthy competition, some really good friends that quickly, and it established relationships in one night. And so being able to do that, have fun, build stuff together, work with our hands, and be able to talk and communicate with that, it kind of sprang us. That was the first major event, and it kind of sprang us into a men's ministry thing that we started doing more spiritual and discipleship type stuff.
Yeah. I from what I've seen from churches that do this well, men's ministry is wrapped around events, not, I think most guys, the last thing they want to do is sit around in a living room in a circle. And I told you guys, what always comes to my mind is that scene in the Jerry Maguire movie with all the ladies sitting around the living room, bad mouthing their husbands, and Jerry Maguire walks in and says, "You complete me," and you had me at hello. That scene. But I think guys have that picture, whether it's true or not. I think they have that picture of this is what church is, as we sit around and tell touchy feeling stories all night long. And guys do not want to do that. They want to break stuff, and or get tools out. Now, I love the idea, that I have never heard that. It's not just playing the games. Let's build the stuff first. I think that's brilliant. Because there are guys that may not play very well, but if you pull out tools, they will get to work. And all of a sudden, they've got a place to shine that they never would otherwise. That there's guys that work with their hands so well and they can shine. I went on a mission trip one time to Haiti, and we had about 10 guys. We were all just normal guys, but there's one construction dude on our trip, and we were building benches for this church, these big 12-foot long benches, and they were enormous. And all of a sudden, we were building them, and about an hour in, I looked around and we are all just standing with our mouths open watching that dude go to work, because he was out working the other 10 of us, and so we were just like, we could not believe, he would drive this big old thick nail in with one swat, and it took all the rest of us 5 swats to put it in, and so there's guys that can shine in the construction side versus the playing side, but either way, it's not sitting around in a circle in a living room crying.
We had one guy show up that night, and he brought a huge trailer, and it's like a shed on wheels basically. It had all the tools and all. I mean, he's ripping things out, and all the guys like, oh man, they're like, marvel at this like shed on wheels kind of stuff. But it was neat. Yeah,
that's right. Well, I love that. That's a great idea. Is building the stuff first, as well as the event. So that's really cool. Well, Stacy, I'm curious what kind of fun things you've done with your guys that have seemed to have been an event that worked for you guys there at Bridge.
Sure. Well, first of all, I'm showing up at EL's next men's event. That sounds fantastic. Great ideas. We've done some fun stuff. I mean, some things that have made our senior pastor, and you guys may or may not know Todd Brown, but probably made his toes curl. But we've done men's fish and chips night where everybody brought fish, and we fried it up in big fryers outside and played poker inside the church. No money involved. All right, no money involved. We did that one time, but we shoot a tremendous amount of firearms here at Bridge Christian Church. Guys, I don't know if you recognize in your church, but there's a tremendous amount of people getting their concealed carry. A lot of them have no idea how to shoot the weapons that they're carrying around. And so we've found an opportunity here to allow guys to go out and shoot. Now, we live in a pretty rural area, so we've got lots of places where we can go out and shoot. In fact, we had guys shooting skeet at our house last week who are going on one of our men's adventure trips. And so the opportunity to go out and just shoot has been a really positive thing for our guys. We do a thing called Men's Adventure Weekends, and that actually led us to a ministry I'll share about later, where we'd have all the men come together for a lunch, and then they would break out, and we'd have guys go play wiffle ball. We'd have guys go fishing and kayaking. We'd have guys go shooting. We'd have all these guys go hiking, and just break men out in groups of 6, 8, 10, 12, 15 guys, and experience those in smaller groups once they'd had a big meal together. So on the activity side, that's something we tried a lot of different things. And again, all of that worked and that guys had a good time. But there's something that EL said earlier that I think we were missing until recently. And EL mentioned the word relationships. My experience is that when guys sweat together, have fun together, that they will begin sharing together. And actually, the picture of the Jerry Maguire movie is not where they want to start. But I believe if you don't have that at some point as your end goal, deeper relationships, deeper connection, that the fun stuff gets flat like an old soda pop. I mean, it just runs out of steam if there isn't an end game in mind. And I think we'd all agree, and Tim had mentioned, discipleship is the end, but that happens in the context of relationships. Men, I think, do best when they're connected with other men who are growing as they are, and encourage them when they're marriage struggles, when they're having trouble with their kids or in professional places. And so we've done our best work when our fun things have been a means to an end. And that end has always been deeper relationships with God and each other, and eventually their community. But at the place we are in men's ministry right now, we do fun things with the purpose of how can we connect those guys to men. And if our events that we're running aren't meeting that need, it doesn't matter how fun they are, then we just don't need to be doing it. There's too many other things vying for their time. So how can we create fun activities, sweat activities that also create relationship opportunities? And that's how we're gauging what a successful week is.
All right. Well, I love that. We are going to get into the two things that you guys were really featuring at your church. I would say that for me personally, in the churches that I served, some of the stuff that I like to do is, and EL alluded to this already, is cooking food around another event. Seems to go really well. And for us, it was sporting events. The ones that you can talk while you're watching. There's some that you want to shut up and watch the game, like football. You're watching the game, and people that care don't want to be talking a whole lot with the guy next to them. And so the couple of events that we discovered that really worked was Daytona, because that's a winter event, February. And then the trick was not the All-Star game in the middle of summer, but the home run derby before the All-Star game is perfect for men's. We did make your own wings. And so we had those big turkey fryer things, and we had like 3 of them, and you dip the basket in and you cook a whole thing, and then guys would make their own sauce and flip it in there when they're done. And so every 5 minutes you got hot wings coming out of the fryer. And the All-Star game is you watch a guy swing for 10 minutes and then there's a break. And so it was a good rhythm of talking, watch a guy hit, eat some more wings. And so it was pretty quick. You're not the only church that has had a poker game in the building, and you can do fun things. We did ours where half the prize went to a mission, or things like that. And so one of our mission partners, I don't know if that's really sacrilegious or not. And movie night on Friday, we had better success on Friday nights than Saturday mornings. That a Friday night deal, watch a movie, make wings or whatever. I just felt a whole lot more relational than a Saturday morning at 7 a.m. with bacon and eggs. And so we enjoyed doing that. So I would tell you guys, you hit the nail on the head. Just playing games, at the end of the day, you're just playing games. And so where's it leading? And so one of the reasons why I asked you guys to be on here tonight is to tell us kind of the next level step that you guys have taken, and kind of describe that fully for those that are joining us tonight or will on demand through our YouTube channel later. Is so it's the one thing about getting guys to even get on your property and come to church, because their wives are praying they'll come. But then you got guys that have been at your church for 10 years and they've made no progress on their faith journey. You know, they just occupy a chair for an hour because the wife drags them there, versus the guy that was there 10 years ago and now he's an elder candidate. And how does that happen? And how does men's ministry help get them there? So I'm curious what you guys are doing on that side, the flip side of it, of trying to take guys deeper, significantly deeper in their faith journey.
Okay, so again, this all goes back to the philosophy of relationship opportunities. And so we're designing men's ministries from that starting point. How do we create relationship opportunities and then go from there? And so I mentioned we used to do the men's adventure weekends where you'd come, you'd sit at big picnic table areas with a bunch of guys, you'd get to talk to them for half an hour, and then you'd go off to some activity where you might be in a kayak or playing wiffle ball, whatever. And the thing that it was missing was enough relational connection time. And if that doesn't happen, then that guy is not a whole lot better off than when he came. He may have heard a good devotional, he may have, but that's, to me, that's a miss. And so what we really needed to create were opportunities for men to be together for longer periods of time, and to sweat together, to play together, to laugh together. And that just takes time. And so we started creating what we call men's adventure retreats. And we started out by choosing a pilot of 7 leaders from our church that I thought would be great leaders in men's ministry if they weren't already in the future. And we took them to the Wind River Mountains in Wyoming and spent 9 days out there backpacking, camping, fishing. And I'd been there before. I'd vetted the trip. I knew it was an amazing time. What I didn't expect to happen was what took place around the campfire every night. And so the men that go on these retreats, they each write a devotional. Most of them have never written a devotional. Some of them probably never read a devotional, much less written one. And each morning that devotional is shared with everybody on the team. Each of those men share their personal God story, their testimony, one of the nights. And so, in fact, that picture down around the campfire, that guy's name is Kenny Butler, and he's sharing his God story. And I'm telling you, these are men's men. These are guys who have fought in wars in Iraq, who own their own businesses, who've been through a lot. And not a single night around that fire was not everybody in tears. I mean, sharing their story, sharing who they were. And I'm telling you, those guys have all been at other men's events we've done, but it was the combination of hardship, sweating together, laughing together, fishing together, that those 7 to 9 days culminated into lifelong friendships, an incredible bond and understanding and of what they were going through, struggling with. Instant accountability partners happened. Those guys still go out for meals, meet each other for breakfast. I have no idea when it even happens anymore. And again, everything from those 9 days starts with those morning devotions and finishes with our evening conversation about what it means to be a godly man. On the nights of those trips, we discuss really basic topics. What's it mean to be a godly father, godly son, godly husband, godly leader, and a godly friend? And as we talk around that campfire, the conversations just get very real. And then from that, the guys share their testimony, and then we spend the rest of the day fishing and hiking and doing amazing things. Since that first trip, those first 7 men became leaders for what now are different options. Obviously, not everybody wants to hike and fish, so we have golf options that Tim has been working for to develop the last couple of years. We have options to hike on the Appalachian Trail. We have teams going to Maine to float the Penobscot River and go to Acadia National Park. We've had teams go to Glacier National Park last year. We have a team that's developing a trip in the Florida Keys for people that like that kind of stuff. So it is real fun. And we have chosen to move towards more exotic locations, things that men have always wanted to do, but no one's ever presented the opportunity. And one of the cool things is that we found that wives are 1,000% in when their husband is going to be the man that they've always wanted him to be. And so money, they'll pay for him to go. They want him to go. And we've never had anybody not go because of an upset wife or an angry wife that we know of. And those trips fill up, especially the more exotic ones out west, Florida Keys, Maine, they fill up within a week of us presenting those options. And the result is not widespread, the whole church, all the men in the church receiving Christ, but or deepening their faith. But man, we have 25 to 30 men who are having a deep connection with God, and they come home with accountability partners, people who have their back. And I'm creating future leaders for men's ministry every year that we do this. So I can share a lot more. I mean, it's not just about that week. We do some residual build up to team build so that when we get on the trip, there's already foundations of relationship there. And then there's residual follow up from that trip. And so out of that 1 week, you end up getting about 8 or 9 months of relationship building and activity that comes out of that. So it's a really powerful thing. And we've got some other cool ideas of some to continue to broaden the base for different kinds of interests. We may do a 5 Major League Baseball fields in 6 days trip. We've got another one planned for a hog hunt down in the Carolinas for some of our hunters. And again, we have the one in the Florida Keys. And so we're just trying to continue to build that out. The men pay all their own way. It hasn't been a big expense of our church. We provide a van and some fuel, and that's it. They take care of all the other expenses, including our leaders at this point. So it hasn't cost us anything. It's only created some real depth in our men, which then spreads out into the rest of our ministries.
Yeah, Stacy, when you described this to me first a couple of years ago, I think I told you this, that I thought to myself, that's building a ministry upside down, because most churches are trying to have these big events by which they get down to discipling relationships. And this one, it sounds like you're really having all these discipling relationships, and you're going to build your ministry upward from there. And I think it's similar to what's happening in a lot of churches in America for the last 40 years. It's about having a big Sunday morning service by which we try to have small groups. But now there's a lot of churches that are trying to have as many small groups, and that builds your church on Sunday morning. And it's just a different way of looking at it. And I think for men's ministry, it'll really work. I'm curious, tell us just a little bit, 2 things. What's a trip to Wyoming look like in a van? And do you have to roll the windows down at times, or how's that work?
No, the whole idea is when everybody stinks, nobody stinks.
Right.
That's just the truth. But honestly, the van ride, and some people can fly if they want. To this point, not a single person has ever chosen to fly. It's 32 hours one way. And we drive right straight through the night, and we don't stop till we get there for a day and a half. And I'm telling you, by the time you arrive, all the extraneous things, they are what they are, but you are brothers. You've talked about everything, you've laughed, you lose all your inhibition, and you just talk. You don't try to, doesn't matter what you look like, smell like, you just become brothers. And so when you strike up on the trail, after you've kind of made that connection and you're free of all those worries about who I'm impressing, by the time you get in the mountains, you can just get real. I mean, you can get in a circle and talk about things, and the people you're around. You've kind of built that relationship before you ever got in the van, Tim. I mean, that's part of that buildup and why it's so important. So yeah, look, it is the best thing. We've had guys that have attended multiple years now, and they all still choose to ride in the van. And everything you're thinking, yes, it's all that. You end up waking up with Skittles stuck inside of your face, and somehow you've slept on a seatbelt all night and your kidneys stopped working. But at the end of the day, it's all part of what creates that relationship opportunity and that discipleship to take place. I wouldn't change it for the world.
Yeah. Well, the flip side of that, as far as the intentional discipleship elements to it, to having guys having to write their faith story and then share it with a group of guys. I mean, how many guys in the church have never done that their whole life? And in a trip, you get 7 guys that do it one night after another. That's enormous. And then to write a devotion that other people have to actually use that, and to have some kind of spiritual thought in it that's somewhat meaningful. There's so many people that have been in the church their whole lives, 50, 60 years, that have never done that element right there. And then prayer or journaling or praying out loud, any of those kind of things are just those very simple discipleship steps that are measurable that can happen on a trip like that. So that's huge. I don't want to give away the secret sauce, but because I don't know who will watch this, but do you want to share about the letters that are written, or do you want to keep that a secret?
No. I would encourage you to do it.
All right.
This is part of what makes the trip really special each year is, so when the men go out, some of our team has worked behind the scenes to get a letter from a parent or parents, a letter from their children if they have children, from their spouse, from one of their best friends, or someone that they respect, and they write incredible letters of encouragement to these men, so that on the night under the stars in the Wind River Mountains, when we're discussing what it means to be a godly father, and you know where those conversations often go, you tend to think about your weaknesses and your struggles, and it's a pretty emotional night. And then after that conversation, to receive a letter from your child, if it's about being a dad, or from your wife, if it's being about being a better husband, it's just an amazing thing to see those guys go back to their tent and read those letters. And it is powerful night after night to receive a letter in the area you think you're failing in, and to receive just how much you're doing to touch the people in your life. And we've seen those letters used in different ways, even on mission trips now. And that's a really powerful part of the trip. And often those guys will bring those letters back to the campfire. Believe it or not, they'll read them to the other people there as an encouragement to, hey, I thought I was just blowing it, but listen to what my 6-year-old daughter just wrote me, or my wife, or my mom, who it's just, that is, Tim, that's a really neat part of the trip.
Yeah, that's huge. EL, why don't we switch gears and you tell us kind of what you're doing with guys to take them deeper and not just throw axes. And have you anybody injured by an axe yet? I'm curious.
No, not yet.
No bloodshed.
Close a couple times. No, we're good.
I said yet. Is that covered in your general church liability insurance?
Probably is not. No.
I would think axes being thrown is maybe not covered, but how do you go from there to taking your guys to a new, deeper level in their faith journey?
What we've been doing here recently is, and I can't take all credit for this, as Stacy will say the same. There's so many guys in our church and men that have a heart for men's ministry. I have 2 guys that just volunteer and just love men. They love guys and want to see them get closer to Jesus, and they want to get closer. And so both of them are named David. I got David Booth and David Anderson, and they actually brought this material to me and said, hey, we want to, we talked about diving deeper. We talked about what does that look like? And so we went into this 33 Authentic Manhood series. And so I'm going to be very clear. I'm not making any money on this. I'm not sponsored by them or nothing, but this is the book that we just went through, and it's called the 33 series. It's got the website right there, which is, I don't know if it's backwards to y'all, but authenticmanhood.com. And we can put this on, Tim, I guess, on some of the website stuff for the webinar. But this is it's a 6-week series, and that's why I like these. And I think there's 7 different volumes of this you can pick, and you can go 1 through 7 if you want. And they got material that's still coming out. But what it does is it's about a 15 to 20 minute DVD. It's a guy teaching. There's 3 guys, and they rotate as they teach. Each guy gets 2 lessons, but they really dig deep. They get into some very deep issues within men on some of the topics that Stacy was just sharing about how to be a better husband, how to be a better dad, how to be a better friend, a worker with your employer, whatever. And then it digs into some very spiritual matters and some things that a lot of men have probably hidden for many years, such as pornography, or just watching things they should not watch, or doing things, or even thinking things that they know is wrong. And this allows guys to see it displayed in a way that's challenging. But the best part about this is it gives the discussion type questions that you get from anything, any kind of a book like that. And to sit around with 6 to 8 guys as we break out after watching the DVD, and to sit and to have these discussion questions about real life issues, about being a husband or being a father, or, just being a spiritual leader. It's been humbling to even have to answer these as a minister, as a leader myself, answering these questions, but being real, and it's being authentic and kind of opening up. And it's a lost thing within men in our society. So many guys, it's like we're raised to protect, and we're raised to not show our true self, in a sense, and to be able to create environments and ways for men to talk and to discuss and to share. And so what's really neat is, we got some guys coming Tuesday nights. We do this, we try to do 6 weeks, and then we take a little bit of a break. We'll have a fun event, throw some axes, eat some men dogs, do some stuff like that. But then we'll come back and do another 6-week series on this authentic manhood. and we're digging deeper and building these relationships. And we're not just talking superficial stuff about football scores or college sports or something. No, we're digging in about, man. And then when I see someone on Sunday, or I see guys on Sunday, they're not talking about, hey man, how are you? They're, hey, how's your mom doing? You know, or hey, how's your wife feeling right now? Is she doing okay? Like, they're really digging deep into these relationships, and it's really cool. And we got guys showing up Tuesday night that don't come to church yet. They haven't been out to Sunday yet. I'm not pushing or pressing them, but they're coming Tuesday night and they're talking to a bunch of guys and they're going through some issues. But it's neat to see some stepping stones getting men closer to Christ.
I love what you said there about just giving guys venues and opportunities to talk the way guys need to.
Yeah.
And because the guys don't talk about the deep stuff like that, and the church needs to be the place they do. I didn't show the statistics from earlier, but the men's ministry there in the DC area said that the surveys are showing that 70% of church-going men struggle with pornography to some level or another. And I grew up in a church where you would never talk about that. And then when I got to plant a church, I was like, this ought to be the one place we do talk about this, because we're going to talk about it from a godly perspective. And so why should that be the one thing we don't talk about when the majority of guys are struggling with that? And so having a place where it's safe and appropriate to talk about that is huge. We had Andy Bowersox on for a webinar a couple months ago about pastoring your pastor. He leads the ministry to pastors in the Mid-Atlantic called Energize Ministries, but he's got this 700-acre ranch with a cabin on it. It's a nice cabin that guys go on retreats for, but there's ATVs and firearms and skeet and all kind of stuff. But he said the reason he does all that is because of the conversation around the fire pit once it gets dark is different. If you come and have supper and then go to the fire pit, it's a normal conversation. If you do guy stuff for the afternoon, then for some reason there's a magic that happens that then that place where the guys just feel safe about talking about real stuff happens. And so that's where the two go hand in hand. It's not one or the other, but the one leads to the other. It's for a purpose and towards an end. And so I love that. So our time is about up. I'm wondering if we have any questions from those that are watching with us tonight. We do have one question about a multiple day retreat. So from Sam that's joined us from Maryland, how often do you do that? Bridge is having several of them. I would say, number one, that your church, until it gets stale, your church ought to have a men's retreat if you're not going to have some of these big adventure deals, because there's something about getting off the property, driving somewhere, staying overnight, that's different than any programming you'll do on your campus. And so if you don't have an annual retreat, spring or fall, and I've been to some, and I don't know, EL or Stacy, if you would remember back in the old days, but you go to some and it's so over programmed with spiritual stuff that you don't do the fun stuff that really opens it up. And so it's like 3 worship services, Friday night, Saturday morning, Saturday night, Sunday morning, and there's no fun time, hardly. And if I were going to do it, I would do one good thing, but then have all these opportunities for guys to have fun, because the one big thing you do then would be so much better because you've done the former. So that's the one question I would say for Sam, or the answer is at least once a year, if not a spring or a fall, for a multiple day, at least an overnight trip. There's something about a road trip that changes everything. So do we have any other questions and answers or questions for EL or Stacy here? I got to switch over from Q&A to the. Don't think so. Well, I would kind of close. I want to give you just a couple more things about Waypoint coming up, but I hope no one would be on this webinar thinking that we got to be invested in men, because I believe personally that the strength of the men in your church really is a picture of the strength of your church. And I do not say that chauvinistically, like anything bad about women, because we can count on the women to be there. We can count on the women to be faithful and to go deep. But history has shown that we can't count them in to do it unless we help them get there. And so, if you've got a strong men's ministry, you've got a strong church every time. And so that's part of the conversation tonight. And we will share those resources here afterwards. Let me share the screen as we're finishing. I'll tell you about a couple of other Waypoint things. Hopefully you've heard by now that Waypoint is going to be hosting the International Conference on Missions in November. And it's something that you can bring a ton of church people to that are kingdom-minded people, missions-interested people in your church. We've got a webinar coming up next month specifically for the prayer team people in your church. And what are some things that we've seen that work at conventions, big scale, that actually work well at your church as well to emphasize prayer in your church? Then I referred to the one for women's ministry coming up in 2 weeks. It'll be similar to this one, except what's working for ladies. And so hopefully you'll come to that. I want to give props to Waypoint or to Mid-Atlantic Christian University, who's been our partner all along, and hopefully they stay that way because we're in the same place trying to help churches get on mission and stay on mission. So I think if you can get your guys on mission, you're going to stay on mission at your church. And so that's why we're talking about this tonight. So thanks for joining us, Stacy and EL. Thanks for sharing with us what you've done. We've got another couple minutes. I don't know if we could share anything else, any other event that you've done. I'm curious, you said the Keys, Stacy. Tell us what's happening at the Keys versus other events driving 31 hours.
Sure.
Would Glacier be even further?
The Keys isn't a whole lot closer. No, it's about 20, which is a whole lot closer, but it's just different strokes for different folks. I mean, we snorkel there, just great fishing, the kayaking out in the back country. We do some charter fishing, which is real cool. My son and I caught some amazing barracuda and tarpon. So, I mean, it's just different for different people.
Yeah.
We'll see. I don't know how viable it'll be. It'll have to kind of prove itself. But yeah, those things have been real. Can I throw in one other thing, Tim, though, that's been super successtional? And it's only because it creates the same atmosphere, is creating a disaster relief team or a national outreach group, if you will. When those guys go and fix up houses in North Carolina after a hurricane, it has the same impact as a week in the mountains fishing together. So there's some kind of low-hanging fruit that if you're from the Carolinas or you're from Virginia and you hear there's a hurricane and you kind of have a readiness team that's got some tools and a trailer like EL described, that will create and has created for us very similar results to a big fun trip to the Florida Keys. So a lot of churches may be more prepared to do that, but maybe haven't created that just for men. But it's a really cool, simple, low-level opportunity that everybody understands, and it's a real neat sense of satisfaction. So just throwing it out.
That's a great point that we can end on here. Our time's up, but have seen that working really well for churches, and everybody in the church loves that their church is going. Even if they don't go, their church is going, and they are so proud that their church is doing something outside their own walls. Well, folks, thanks for joining us tonight. We hope we see you at a future webinar, or that you would go back to the Waypoint YouTube channel to see any of those that we've already done that might help equip some of the leaders at your church to do what they do better, so that your church is just really firing on all cylinders. So thanks for joining us tonight, and we hope to see you again soon. Stacy and EL, thanks for what you're doing at your churches.
Thanks, Tim.
Thank you, Tim.